Ladies and gentlemen, I keep telling you that the Canon 7D series is one of the most popular series of cameras that have ever been released. The Canon 7D series was amazing. It is no longer in circulation because of the 90D and what Canon wants to do with the future of their cameras. But you gotta understand that the 7D series is still a staple, and you can find these cameras for next to nothing, under $900, the 7D Mark I and the 7D Mark II. But why do I rave about the 7D series so much? Today we're going to be talking about the 7D Mark II specifically. The 7D series boasted high frame rates, better autofocus systems, and still giving you high megapixels, and having the ability to use full frame camera lenses and crop frame sensor lenses. So you're thinking about all these different things that you can have in a camera, but on top of that, the camera usually costs under $2,000. The flagship camera costs $6,000, and a lot of people were pairing these two up together, the flagship along with the comparable 7D of that year. So why do I call the 7D series the dark horse of the Canon DSLR lineup? Canon at the time was a company that really got popular after the 5D Mark II. Now the 5D Mark II was an amazing camera for video and photos. One of the first full frame, I want to say B-roll camera, crash cams that could do full frame video. Full frame video wasn't something that a lot of cinematographers were doing at the time. It was an immersive video with all the depth of field and all the things that cinematographers love, amplified in a smaller camera. It didn't have all the features, but it gave you the look that you wanted, and a look that was unique, more unique than anything else. Now rock with me for a second. Now imagine you're a photographer in the year 2009 and you're trying to be a better sports photographer, trying to be a better action and sports photographer. Now you walk up with your meager means camera because you don't have the money to afford the biggest, latest, baddest camera, but you can afford something decent. And you're walking around and you're noticing all these guys with the biggest, baddest cameras that can shoot 8, 9, 10 frames a second, and you're sitting there with a camera that shoots 4 frames a second, and you're doing sports. Now let's be real. If you're doing sports, you're studying how to do sports. You're trying your best to be the best photographer you can be. There's a limit to how many frames you can do per second. Even if you're at the right place in the right time, sometimes technology can be the hindrance to you getting a great picture. Now, Canon was able to do that in a sub $4,000 body. Now you have the 7D Mark I that kind of mimics some of that full, not necessarily full frame, but 1080p, interchangeable lens type image. So you can now use all the EF lenses to get your kind of visual that you wanted, and you have so many lenses to choose from, and all of them was in this new APS-C format that was you could manually focus and do whatever you wanted to. And then the 7D Mark II advanced on that. So going from this 5D Mark II all the way to the 7D Mark II, the 7D Mark II advanced. These cameras were in very, very popular films. But on top of that, more than anything, the people who were photographers loved the 7D Mark II, not just for its new dual pixel autofocus for video. They also loved it for mainly its autofocusing in pictures. It has one of the most advanced autofocusing systems ever to hit a DSLR. Now, this was the flagship APS-C DSLR. That means it was like the king of the mid-range camera, so to speak. Not only was the 7D great, but it was too great in a lot of cases. And the reason why is because when the 7D Mark II came out, the 1DX was the flagship on the market. The first generation 1DX. So essentially, you could have a 7D Mark II and still have the ability to capture those extra moments in between moments at 10 frames a second? You have to understand how amazing this was to have a camera under $1,600 that was able to compete with the higher end bodies. Because as a pro, we want to offer the best. We want to compete with the best, and photography is so competitive, especially at the Olympics, especially in sports, because you really got to know what you're doing, and you really got to put in effort just to get in the game for sports. You got to be able to capture those moments. You got to be in the right spot. And once you invest in the lenses and the bodies and one brand like Canon, Sony, Panasonic, Nikon, whatever, you tend to stick with that brand because you've invested money, and all these things are interchangeable. If I was a beginner, because the 7D Mark II at the time had
sensor so much that it surpassed what I thought the 5D series was doing at the time. It surpassed what the 1D series was doing at the time. And the 7D Mark II really opened people's eyes to see what Canon could do.